today's transmission, we will be discussing the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And there are a lot of things to discuss in this. The first one being, in my opinion, how it made us all feel. Because I was rattled by it, to say the least. I posted a reel a little bit after it happened, and I felt, I don't know if you could see it, but visibly shook by it. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel as though a lot of us went through that. We were in a state of disbelief. And there's probably a piece of me that's still in that state of disbelief. Disbelief that someone who is, or was, only 6 months older than me, for believing in his convictions, never committing a crime, lost his life because of it. And of course, there are many things that I, of course, disagree with Charlie on, politically speaking, ideologically speaking, but that never constitutes someone's life to be taken. That never constitutes someone to be brutally executed in a public fashion, in a mass execution like that. It's wrong. It should never occur. In front of his kids, in front of his wife. And I want to also point out, because I saw a lot of this in the reels that I posted, of people mocking him, of people saying horrible things. And I get that, and I try to empathize that we all were rattled in a sense. We all had maybe a knee-jerk reaction to the instant because of how, let's say, energetically moving it was. But I do not believe in any stretch of the imagination that someone who has committed no crime, no matter the words they speak, should not be publicly executed, should not be subject to something like that. In order for us to be better, for America to move forward, for America to no longer be stained with the blood of our past and, quite frankly, even our present, for us to move forward into a time of peace, we have to be able to have conversations without resorting to violence. We have to emotionally and intellectually evolve to a place where we don't take somebody's life because of their beliefs. We must realize that if we feel that there is something wrong with the world, that we become powerful enough in order to change it ourselves and not rely on anybody else. And so a side of me realizes that people saw this, they are aware of Charlie's take on Israel and Gaza and feel as though this is somehow morally justified. And I think that that is not something for any of us to take a stance on. That is up to God, Spirit, Source, Nature, Allah, whatever you call the entity that pervades all of us. That is what is the governing body. That is who casts the judgment. It is not up to us. So even if it is your most hated enemy in the entire world, to see the amount of people who fell into the trap set by the evil forces to encourage you deeper into the realm of hatred, I extend a hand out and hope that you find a way to do your best to find peace in your life. See if you can find a way to make amends for it, because to defeat evil, you cannot become evil. You will only make evil stronger in the sense. We cannot be attempting to make this world a better place while simultaneously becoming evil in the path, in the journey. And I mean, look, I think in the last months, and maybe we'll get back to this, is that Charlie was starting to wake up to things that Israel was doing, that he was starting to realize and disagree with. He was starting to ask the right questions, which highlights that, yes, we are on this planet for a short period of time, but everyone has their own arc of life, the journey of the soul, whatever it is, in order to figure out what it is they need to figure out for their next stage of evolution, for the individual stage of evolution. And to cut that short is a disservice, not only to the individual, but to the collective, to the world, to America, because to allow people to have their redemption arc, to see that unfold is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful things in the world. The humility that comes with realizing that maybe an idea you held for so long was wrong. To be able to take a step back, put your ego to the side, put your pride down and say, yeah, I was wrong on this. Let's fix this. This is wrong. Should not be taken from anybody. And the only way that you can do that is to combat that with words and evidence, to become articulate, to become powerful so that you can influence other people to what is hopefully the right way of thinking. Because we are in a spiritual war. What you see playing out on the physical realm is guided by our thoughts. And the devil, for his lack of a better word of genius, plays on our emotions. He understands how to manipulate and how to pull you further away from nature, from God, from Allah, from Source. And it is your responsibility to know which thoughts you are acting on. Because everybody is redeemable. Even the guy that you see in the video who starts cheering the instant that Charlie was brutally murdered. Even he has a redemption arc for himself. And the only way you can influence people to your side is to be smart, to be articulate, to become a force of nature that has to be dealt with, that has to be considered, that has to be acknowledged, that becomes important and influential. And going around just murdering people is not the way to do it. Luigi Mangione, another perfect example of this. Just because our healthcare system is absolutely broken, people are being left to die because they can't afford certain medications or insurance, is evil. But for him, Luigi, to go and murder a father, a husband, is evil in itself. And so I hope that anyone who is mocking Charlie, who is feeling as though justice has been served, you take a long look in the mirror and really sit down with what you believe. Because at the end of the day, we are all one family. The way I see it is that Charlie could be my brother, could have been a friend who I had never met. Maybe if I had met him, I would have had the ability to bring him over, let's say, to the side of realizing and empathizing with the people in Gaza and the West Bank. We don't know. But you have to do everything in your power, because life is the most precious thing in the entire universe. It's sacred. There's something about it that is why we call it a miracle. The process of creating life, no matter in what form, from a woman, from a reptile to fish, it's one of the most beautiful things in the entire world. and for it to be just taken by somebody who, for whatever reason, influenced by thoughts, who knows, paid by a organization. We don't know. It's too soon to tell for sure. We have to honor life. Because today it's someone we disagree with, but tomorrow it could be someone we agree with. And that hatred that you expressed it for the other person will come back to you in a different form. Because karma is very, very real. It is not up to us to decide when life ends. That's up to nature. That's up to a higher power. Now, of course, I do have many opinions of maybe what happened, what came out, the different things that occurred. But I do want to reiterate that however you worship the divine, please say prayers, light candles, whatever it is, for life, for Charlie's soul, for the souls of his kids and his wife. Because now there are 2 more kids in this world that are fatherless. There's another single mother in this world. Things that in America society that we have to correct, we have to fix, and yet we cannot be celebrating whenever those numbers are increasing. It goes against the fabric of being a human being. It goes against the morality of life itself. So the best message I can have for you is do not carry out evil in the name of evil. Do not fight evil with evil. It will never work. You will lose yourself along the way. You'll lose your connection to source along the way. You will find yourself sliding down a slippery slope deeper into the pits of hell. And you will not start walking up and out until you realize that. So I condemn everyone in my comment section who cheered this on, who I continually to see who are mocking his death. It is wrong. And that point cannot be understated. Because America is in a very fragile state right now, where the smallest event, smallest chain reaction could occur that sends us into a civil war. When the reality is that the name of us, the United States of America, needs to become united again, needs to join together in the face of evil. However you can manifest that in your life, whether you're a Republican and you have a Democratic friend, whether you're a Democrat and have a Republican friend, whatever it might be, we have to stop evil in its tracks. Because even though we disagree with people politically, we can't allow that to resort to violence in any shape. Now, let's kind of transition maybe into some of the things surrounding Charlie's death, and we'll talk about some of the news events that have been occurring in the week, and I'll start throwing in my little bit of opinion in regards to all of this. But I think first and foremost, we have to be careful at this time. Not a lot has come out. Time will tell. And we can even already see that there are holes in the story that the FBI is giving us, the CIA. There's people who claim to be the shooter, or they did certain strategies that are normally employed to let the shooter get away. There's questions about the rifle. And so before we even move forward in this transmission, I do want to be very clear that a lot of what we will be talking about and what I will be talking about is just, I'll be sure to differentiate the facts from my opinion, from connecting the dots, which maybe you won't be able to do on your own. And I just can't get it out of my head that we really have to find a way to come together, to become united, to put down any sort of labels that we may have, to not allow an incident like this divide us. And I guess the question of who would try to divide us, because people are already jumping to now the conclusion, right? We have a bunch of different things coming out. It was a radical right. It was a radical left. He has a transgender roommate. It's like, well, first of all, just because he had a transgender roommate doesn't mean anything. I mean, maybe he sympathizes with the transgender. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's a lot of accusations being thrown around, and we're going to dive into some of and why that may be happening. Now, one of the tweets that really got my attention and went viral was that on August 14th, a guy by the name of Harrison Smith, who I believe works at InfoWars, so that would be about a month ago, tweeted, "I'm not going to name names, but I was told by somebody close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against him." Now, he did follow up, and someone even quoted it and said, "Hey, like, Harrison, is this true?" And he said, "Yeah." We also have the fact that about a month ago, Charlie started to question a lot of the narratives that were being given to him regarding Israel, a lot of his beliefs in Israel. He was starting to say that there are policies being put forth by a lot of Jewish donors. He said this in an interview with Megyn Kelly. He was on the phone he was on an interview or talking to Ben Shapiro, talking about how there was a lot of things that Jewish donors needed to talk about, needed to address, that were being pushed in American society that he was starting to disagree with. Now, all of that's real. And what's also real is that within moments after being shot, at the same exact time, you have Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu tweeting about the incident at the same exact minute at 3:02 p.m., which makes Bibi the first one essentially to talk about it, to come out about it. But the fact that they tweeted at the same exact time is crazy to me. Both of them saying to pray for him, to pray for Charlie. And if you saw the video, there was nothing that I don't think any medical institution could do. But it's interesting because you also at the same time have Bibi Netanyahu, who is currently in the middle of bombing about 7 to 8 different countries at the moment now. And so for him to be able to come out and say this is highly questionable. And again, we're in a very turbulent time right now, and I'm still feeling like I'm adjusting to all of this, still letting all of this resonate and fall in, if you will. So I will try my best to keep my personal beliefs out of this and let you make your own decisions for yourself. Another very interesting tweet that came out that honestly, again, did not sit well with me is that about an hour and a half after Bibi and Trump tweeted, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, came out and said, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Bro. Well done, good and faithful servant. Like, again, I feel that the anger within me of the people who are running our country coming up, and so I am going to refrain from diving into those, but I think you can feel the energy in that statement. And if not, maybe I'm reading into things, so we'll leave it at that. But again, within hours, days, before we even knew who the shooter was, because the shooter took like 3 days in order for them to find him, we have Trump blaming the radical left, which, guess what, creates division, blaming the radical left for the death of Charlie Kirk before we even knew who the shooter was, if it even was this Tyler Robinson. And then we have Bibi Netanyahu going on a campaign tour across America media blaming radical Muslim extremists. Again, before we even saw any evidence of who the shooter may or may not have been. And it was also crazy that Netanyahu went on this tour to try to what? Involve himself in Charlie's death somehow? Why would he do that? You know, there's one argument that, well, Charlie was a big advocate for Israel. And, well, it sounded like his tune was starting to change. But why would Bibi Netanyahu go out of his way to go on this tour? There was also an interview that Bibi was on, and I don't know who the reporter was that asked him, but straight up asked him, and it's crazy that she did. She said, there's people online saying that Israel had something to do to this, so I have to ask you, what do you think? And Bibi kind of gives this hand waving response that really wasn't any sort of indication of yes or no, and summarized it with saying, people are anti-Semitic and anyone will say anything to, he essentially pulls the victim card. And I find it just crazy. I find it absolutely crazy, and I find it to be something that is very telling if you're reading between the lines. If you're reading between the lines, you can read in his mannerisms and his facial expressions what he is trying to say, what he is saying. And so I highly recommend, if you're interested in those, to go find those videos. But truly, overall, and I think I said this a little bit, but I have a note here, so it's worth repeating, is that America is a country that has been steeped in bloodshed since its creation. There's no doubt about that. The entire world has been, for that matter, but we're going to focus specifically on the United States. Steeped in bloodshed from its creation to now, where we're killing over 1 million Middle Eastern people, civilians, mind you, in the last 20 years. And to me, this bloodshed has to end. It has to end. Nobody truly wants it. Maybe you can find some fringe people on the left, on the right, maybe Randy Fine who wants to nuke Gaza. You can find some fringe people. And unfortunately, a congressman, which is who Randy Fine is, which is unfortunate. But this evil that enters into the mind must be stopped. We have to stop it. And it's it's all of our responsibility. Because we have to find a way to change the narrative of what it means to be a citizen of the United States. I never want to have to go to foreign countries and the first people think about is how we've invaded and destroyed and dismantled and created regime changes and the blood that is on the hands of our politicians, of the military-industrial complex. We have to stop this. We have to prevent this incident from turning into a civil war within ourselves. And I find it repulsive, at the least, that is how, and what it seems, Donald Trump has used this as a gateway to blame the left, to blame the radical left. And it's not just him. Congress all over does this. It's the radical left. It's gun control. We need more gun control. It's the radical left. It's the right. When are we going to realize that it's evil? Evil enters you through thoughts. And if you take action on those thoughts, you become evil. It's that simple. And I'll make a spiritual podcast, an indigo education podcast on that, about that at some point. But seriously, think about it. Ask yourself, do demons exist? Think seriously, long and hard, do demons exist? Now, many people intuitively will answer yes. But how do you know? How are you so confident that demons exist? Because I know you've never seen one. Have you? And the answer is that demons come through thoughts. They come through the mind. And when you foster those thoughts, you become more and more demonic. You can see it in the book of that school shooter just a few days ago. And also it shows. We had the school shooter a few days, well, I guess right now it'd probably been about a week ago. Then we had the stabbing of the Ukrainian girl. And now we have this with Charlie Kirk. Evil is perpetuating the minds of America, of the weak. And we have to make people stronger. We have to do everything in our power to make people stronger so that we do not suffer as a society. Because the analogy of that you're only as strong as your weakest link is so true. And the policies that keep getting put forth, the lack of ingenuity in our American politics is grotesque, because it is continuously making our weakest link weaker and weaker and weaker, to the point where evil can very easily enter the mind and allow atrocities like this to occur. So whether or not you want to blame the radical left, radical Muslims, Mossad, Israel, whoever you want to blame, you have to realize that the culprit is evil. And if you are going around and shouting that this needs to now happen to someone on the other side, this needs to happen to X, to Y, to Z, that is a part of the problem. And it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to overcome those thoughts, to be more powerful than those thoughts. That's your responsibility. And what makes all of this even stranger is that there was a book that came out on Amazon about the assassination of Charlie Kirk before it even happened. Now, let me see if I can pull it up here. Now, some of the things that were kind of going on about this book is that it was a book published about Charlie's death. Okay. But the fact was it got uploaded to Amazon a day before it happened on September 9th. Now, it gets kind of even crazier because it talks about the Utah event. It talks about the killer being caught, which didn't happen. And now you have Amazon coming out saying it was a technical glitch that it got posted the day before. Now, what is being said is that it was an AI generated book. They created it, they posted it to essentially try to monetize the event, which maybe that's plausible, that you could just, I'd be interested to read the book. I don't know if anyone ever purchased it or found a copy of it or what, but that would be an interesting thing to read to see if it does have traces of AI in it. But I haven't heard or seen anything about that. And so we don't know, but I think it's interesting because it leads to one of like the overarching things that are going on in this. And that's kind of what I'm doing in this podcast. I don't really want to jump to too many conclusions. I think time will tell all. So the more that we're able to put faith in the system, to see what's going to happen, trust the process, the cards will be shown. And the fact that the FBI and CIA are giving this very crazy story to begin with is very telling. And so I definitely encourage everyone to kind of do their own research. And someone who has also been a pretty big, let's say, anti-Israel personality, Candace Owens, she tweeted a lot of things. She tweeted, and I don't really know the direct order in this. I'm not sure if it's top to bottom or bottom down. She said, all lies will be revealed. And then in a new tweet, she said, it is 100% true. Charlie opposed the war with Iran and was fighting with his donors over Israel, which is true. Charlie did originally oppose the war and then slowly over time started moving his own goalposts. And then she says, as Tucker Carlson just shared on Megyn Kelly's show, she says, this is why I am discomforted by this, discomforted by the international lie by omission that Bibi told on Fox News about the letter Charlie wrote him. So I guess Bibi said a letter that I'm not aware of. She then goes on to say that Bibi lied about the contents of the letter Charlie wrote to him in May. It was a lie by severe omission, and it isn't sitting right with me. He held the letter in his hand and propagandized it. So I'm not sure what she's specifically talking about there, but it fits a let's say this, it fits a narrative. It fits I don't like to call it a narrative, but a potential reality in which a certain country Charlie used to champion for. Charlie got a ton of donors from said country. He was very adamant about that. He talked to Ben Shapiro. There's a clip that going around where Ben Shapiro talks about how Charlie was like hustling at different Jewish events to get donors for Turning Point USA. And again, I want to be very clear that what Charlie created was a force. Turning Point is a force in American politics, and that cannot be denied. Whether you agree with that force of being good on certain issues or bad, it doesn't matter. It is and was a force. With him gone, it obviously does well, we'll see. I don't want to get into that, but the point being is that a lot of his donors are from a certain country. That Charlie started to open his eyes to the evils and the atrocities that said country was doing, and the evil policies that said country was enacting in the United States. And all of that I'm just going to leave there for you. Again, do your own research. Don't take my word as gospel. Find more sources, but it's very unfortunate. And I think, we can kind of transition at this point into what has happened in the last week that we are now not talking about because of such a tragic event. Well, for starters, the Senate voted the other day on the Epstein files. Did you know this? And they voted 51-49 to hide the files, to bury them, to cover them up. So you have that, but we're not talking about that. You have Mike Johnson claiming that Donald Trump was an FBI informant. We're not talking about that. Well, and then in regards to the Epstein files, and then Caroline Leavitt said that it was a lie. So we're not talking about that. We're not talking about how Qatar was bombed by Israel, and then Qatar, because what you have to realize is that Qatar is like this like peace agreement area. Like they create peace in that region regarding everyone. They're supposed to be like a safe haven, and for them to be bombed by by Israel while Hamas was there discussing the peace offering from Israel is just crazy. But the point is that we're not talking about that. We're not talking about how the war is bankrupting everyone. Every country is in poverty, from India to China to Russia to Israel to the United States. Everyone's poor. Nobody has any money. We're not talking about how Trump is going to deploy the National Guard to Memphis, Tennessee now. Meanwhile, in D.C., all they're doing is picking up trash, apparently, at this point. And we're not going to talk about, I guess, how there was a ship that got bombed in, an aid ship of Greta Thunberg that was going to Gaza for aid. And Israel said they didn't do it. People claim they heard a drone overhead before it happened. We don't really know. There's a whole lot of hoopla. And then on top of all of this, we're not talking about how the UN had a vote for Palestine to become state, to be recognized as statehood. And it was 142 to yes, 10 to no, and 12 abstaining. And of course, Israel and US voted no. And so because of that, they have like a majority, like there's some weird rules where there's like, I forget, like maybe 10 or 12 different countries who, if they vote no, it's like a breaker. Like you need all of these certain countries for it to be legitimate. So the fact of the matter is we're not talking about any of that. And so I feel that, going back to the energies, certain things happen at certain times to hide certain things. And a lot of things have been happening in this last week. And look at me. We're now at almost 33 minutes into this podcast. And I don't usually go this long, at least not recently. So I don't have and I could sit here, we could get into the details of all of these things. And maybe I will. Maybe I will in a future podcast. Maybe I'll save some of these, especially the way the energies feel right now. Maybe we'll save some of these. We'll bring these up in a future podcast. As a matter of fact, we'll do that because I don't want to let these things get buried. These are important stuff. So I'm just going to copy all this right now. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you're not seeing it on the mainstream media anywhere. So what you have to do is you'll have to stay following me so that you can get this information. So that we can actually talk about it next week. Because I felt that this podcast in particular should truly be a sign of respect and hopefully a sign of unification between us and those we may disagree with. I wore a suit and tie out of respect for Charlie and his family. And I hope that you can find ways to show peace and love in this time. Because evil and hate is not going to create peace. It never has and it never will. So with all that being said, I appreciate you all for tuning into this transmission. Next week, we're going to probably have a very, very long show, considering we have a lot of things to get into from last week that we did not cover today. And I gave you some cliff notes of them. And we'll get into those a future time. So I really appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. And yeah, this was a jarring week, to say the least. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you have any thoughts, please drop them down in the comment section. For all other inquiries, we'll have to talk about it whenever I see you in the 6th dimension.